The night shift changes people. It changes places too. When the world goes quiet, when the lights dim, when the last customer walks out and the doors lock, that's when the strange things happen. I have worked the night shift at different jobs for over 10 years. You may not believe in ghost stories, but those of you who ever have worked nights know the same thing I do. Strange things happen that you can't explain. Here are 10 true night shift horror stories, each pulled from real accounts of people who worked while the rest of the world slept. Stay tuned to the very end for a bonus story about one of many experiences I have had myself. Story 1. The Woman in the Freezer Aisle. A man working overnight at a small-town grocery store was used to strange customers, but never at 3 a.m. The store should have been empty. Yet every night during stocking, he'd hear the soft squeak of a shopping cart somewhere in the aisles. One night, he turned a corner and froze. A woman stood in the freezer aisle staring at him, barefoot, wearing a hospital gown. Her skin was blue, actually blue, and frost gathered in her hair as if she had just walked out of a blizzard. He blinked. She vanished. But the freezer door next to him swung open with a long metallic groan. Inside, on the ice-covered floor, were wet footprints, bare footprints, leading deeper into the freezer, stopping at the back wall. The next morning, an officer came in asking if any employees had seen a missing woman who had wandered away from the local hospital. She had died of exposure the night before. The picture the officer showed him made him drop to his knees. It was her. Story 2. The Hospital Room That Calls for Help. A nurse working the graveyard shift at a regional hospital kept getting emergency call lights from room 314. When she checked the chart, the room was marked unoccupied. Still, the call light flashed every night around 2:15 a.m. Finally fed up, she walked to the room to check the wiring, but when she opened the door, the air felt heavy, wrong. She smelled something sweet and rotten. The call light button on the bedside rail clicked down on its own like someone invisible was pressing it. She backed out of the room slowly. The next day, a senior nurse told her the truth. Room 313 had been sealed off for months. A man had coded in that bed alone while hitting the call button over and over. The staff didn't reach him in time. His last recorded call for help, 2:15 a.m. Story 3. Lights in the Woods Behind the Gas Station. A night shift cashier working at a rural gas station always saw strange lights flickering in the woods behind the building. At first he thought it was ATVs or hunters, but the lights moved wrong, too fast, too smooth, too silent. One night he stepped outside to smoke and saw one of the lights drift toward him. It wasn't a vehicle. It wasn't a flashlight. It was a glowing white orb, the size of a human head, floating through the darkness like something alive. It stopped at the tree line, pulsing softly, and then another appeared, and another. Suddenly, all at once, the fluorescent lights inside the station flickered off. The register shut down. The gas pumps click silent. He heard whispering behind him, dozens of voices layered together, speaking in a language that didn't sound human. He ran inside and locked the door, and the second he did, the power came back. The woods behind that station were cleared a year later. Nothing unusual was found, but the lights returned anyway. Story 4. The Last Patient in the Clinic. A janitor working at a closed medical clinic was mopping when he heard coughing from exam room 4. Thinking a patient had stayed behind, he knocked and opened the door. A woman sat on the exam table, her back to him, long black hair, thin gown. "Ma'am, we're closed." She didn't move. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She turned slowly, showing a face gray and sunken, eyes dark and hollow. She opened her mouth to speak, but a long stream of thick black fluid poured out instead, pooling at her feet. He stumbled back and slammed the door shut. When he ran for help and returned, the room was empty, not a drop of fluid anywhere. He quit that night. A doctor later told him something he'll never forget. Exam room 4 was where they kept the bodies temporarily when the morgue filled up. Story 5. The Subway Security Camera. A subway operator working nights hated checking the platform cameras. They always showed weird things, shadows that didn't match, blurry figures that disappeared too quickly. But one night he saw a man standing at the very edge of the tracks. motionless, head down, hands folded in front of him like someone praying. He grabbed his flashlight and went to check. The platform was empty. He hurried back to the monitors, and the man was still there. Same pose, same clothing, same stillness. Only now, the figure slowly lifted its head and stared directly into the camera. He covered the screen with his jacket until his shift ended. To this day, that camera glitches only on the night shift, and only on that platform. Story 6. The Overnight Hotel Guest. A hotel front desk worker did the night shift alone. Around 1:30 a.m., the lobby phone rang from room 807, a room he knew was vacant. "Can someone check on my husband? He's not breathing." "Ma'am, no one is in that room," she cried out. "He's turning blue. Please, please help us." When he returned to the lobby, the phone rang again. Same room. The voice on the phone whispered, "You're too late." He didn't get another call the rest of the night. The next morning, he told the housekeeper what had happened. She looked terrified. What she told him next made his throat drop all the way to his stomach. That room. A couple died there last winter. Carbon monoxide leak. He never answered a call from 807 again. Story 7. The Warehouse Footsteps. A night shift manager at a massive distribution warehouse often heard footsteps on the catwalks above the main floor. Heavy boots, slow, deliberate. But the catwalks were restricted. No workers allowed after hours. One night he climbed the ladder to check. The entire walkway shook as if someone had just run past him, but he saw no one. As he turned to climb back down, he heard breathing behind him. Slow, deep, wet. He refused to turn around. He descended the ladder as fast as he could, and the footsteps followed right above, matching his pace. He locked himself in the office and waited out the shift. Corporate denied any accidents happened there. Other workers say otherwise. Someone fell from that catwalk years ago and wasn't found until the next morning. Story 8. The Cemetery Groundskeeper. A groundskeeper for a historic cemetery preferred the night shift because it paid more. But he hated the mausoleum. Every night while doing rounds, he'd hear soft tapping from inside the stone walls, sometimes faint, sometimes frantic. He told himself it was the temperature shifting the metal. One night the tapping became pounding, violent, desperate, and then, in a dozen different tombs at once, something began clawing, scratching, dragging nails across stone with a sound that made him drop his flashlight. He ran for the gate, but it wouldn't open. The clawing grew louder behind him, closer, from every direction. When he finally got the gate open, the cemetery fell silent. He never returned, but the new night groundskeeper says the same thing. It always starts with tapping. Story 9. The highway patrol call that wasn't possible. A state trooper working the night shift responded to a call about a stranded vehicle. Dispatch said the caller reported seeing a man lying on the road. When he arrived, he found the car empty, doors open, hazard lights blinking. He approached the dark stretch of pavement with caution, and then he heard it. "Help me, please." The trooper shined his flashlight everywhere. Nothing. The voice came again, but this time directly behind him. He spun around. No one there. Dispatch called him at that same moment. "Officer..." That call came from a disconnected number. That phone's owner was declared dead 2 years ago. Story 10. The Factory Clock-Out Line. At a manufacturing plant, the night shift always ended at 4 o'clock a.m. Workers lined up at the old punch clock to swipe out, but employees kept reporting seeing an extra person in line, someone tall, with long limbs, wearing outdated clothes, and a pale, expressionless face. He never punched out. He just stood there, staring. One night, a worker got fed up and approached the figure. "Buddy, shift's over. You need to move." The figure slowly turned toward him, its neck cracking loudly, unnaturally. Its face had no eyes, just hollow black sockets that seemed to swallow the dim factory lights. The worker screamed and ran. Everyone else scattered. Management denied everything, but the next night no one punched out alone. Bonus story, the Afterlife basketball game. This one is my own. It happened to me, and I still get chills thinking about it. In 2015, I was a janitor for the local high school. We worked until midnight every night. The gym had a little hallway with classrooms. One night I was cleaning in a classroom when I heard basketballs bouncing in the gym. I heard what sounded like kids laughing and talking. It was not uncommon for the boys' basketball coach to let them get extra practice late at night. He told me any time that the boys were still practicing after midnight to tell them to make sure they cut the lights off and lock the doors as they leave. By then it was almost midnight, so I was going to tell them to make sure they do the routine when I leave. As soon as I walked out of the classroom into the gym, all the sound stopped. I thought it was strange, so I walked out of the hallway and sure enough, the gym was empty. I knew I wasn't crazy. As I walked back in the classroom, I thought maybe the cleaner was getting to me. As soon as I was back in the class, I heard the balls bouncing again and the kids talking. I said, "Damn, these kids are messing with me." I walked back out, but the sounds stopped again. No balls, no kids, just an empty gym. As I turned to walk back in the class, the noise started again. I ran this time to catch the boys in the act of getting one over on me. The sound was coming from an empty gym. I could clearly hear all the noises of a basketball game being played even though I was alone. To say I hauled ass out of there is an understatement. I left all my cleaning supplies and didn't even turn the lights off. The next day, the principal asked what happened. When I told her, she went pale. I asked her if she was all right. She said, "So you have heard them too." I was scared to death every night after that. I would cut the lights off and run out the door. Night shifts are strange places. Hours when the world is supposed to sleep, but something else seems wide awake, watching the few who wander through the darkness. Every hospital, every mall, every warehouse, diner, cemetery, gas station, and factory has its own whispers, its own footsteps, its own shadows that move where they shouldn't. And the people who work those hours learn very quickly that the dark isn't empty. It never was. Some learn to ignore the strange noises. Some pretend they didn't see what they saw in the corner of their eye. And some walk away from their job and never look back. But for those who stay, for those who punch in while everyone else is tucked safely in their beds, just remember this. If you hear footsteps behind you when no one else is scheduled, if you see someone standing under a flickering light, if you get a call from a room that should be empty, if something stares at you through a camera that's been offline for years, if you see someone like and subscribe to Tales from the Fiend, you're not imagining it, you're just working the night shift.